ready.
All right, so we'll start with measuring competency is probably something that we take very seriously, but I always think there's room for improvement. Staff selection, we start with the very, even from how our jobs are posted.
Yes.
Every position has a thorough job description that really tries to outline the specifics, the qualifications, and even some of the generalities. Of working in a nonprofit, you wear many hats, and trying to capture some of that for every position, because you don't come in here and just do one thing.
Yes, that's true.
But you typically are hired for a certain skill set, education, operations, clinical. I think when we come on board, and you've experienced some of this, the real important part, well, let me go back. So staff selection, the resumes, hiring process is a two-part process. There's usually an initial interview where it's just one or two people. Just make sure, again, the person has the qualifications and has maybe the temperament or a personality that seems to be a fit. I think we know that there's a certain type of person that's successful in working in a trauma-related agency. You've got to see someone that has, a rather optimistic personality that can see the positive in things. You need someone that demonstrates flexibility, because things are always shifting here. You need someone that really appreciates teamwork, because we're small, we need each other. And so someone that can accept that, accept being in a different role. So some of those are kind of underlying values that we look for in that very first. And if they demonstrate it, we move them on to a second interview. And if they don't, we say thanks for coming.
Okay.
And then the second interview is really that drill down a little bit more into their skill sets, giving them a little bit more challenging questions and reality, to see how their judgment, how they would handle certain things, spending a little more time with them, because sometimes that gives you a better sense of their temperament. And then the decisions are made. So it's usually, there's a resume and there's at least 2 points of contact before we make an offer to anybody. Once they come in, we have an extensive employee handbook. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yes, because as an intern, we're supposed to sign up part of it, so it's kind of extensive, that's true, yes.
And that's okay, because it's all of those HR policies from funeral leave to, how you're paid and your training opportunities. So when we onboard someone, the first day and a half is really all orientation to the agency. And I know some people are like, that's extensive, but that's part of, we are, for a couple reasons. One, everybody gets the same thing. So whether you remember it or not, everybody's, hearing everything about safety and child abuse and how we handle certain things. And there's quizzes that go along with some of those. So there's a competency that comes from, are you following HIPAA laws and the mandated child abuse laws and those kind of things. So we're measuring competency right there at the acquisition of new skills. But then everybody starts with the same spot. And then as you go into your programs, you're to be oriented more to your program specific. I think that's an area that varies, that, we're real consistent in that orientation to the agency, but we're consistently inconsistent in what it looks like going into the programs. To me, that's a huge area of growth. Even from being systematic about, these are the orientation things we talk about once you come into ops or development or whatnot.
But I see you put a lot of emphasis on training. Like this afternoon, I go to the conscious discipline, and when I talked to Cheryl, she told me about the specific trainings that the therapists have to do for TCIT or EMDR, and they have to be supervised, they have to be coached. So it's really well organized.
It is on that space of it, because I see it as you come on board and you have to learn how to do your job. And what we know then is once you get in there, there's still that need for professional development and clinical development. And I think we do a fine job, like you said, in that next step. I really value our all staff meetings. I think we are so fortunate as an agency that we have no clients, for an afternoon, and we can come together to do the rounds so that we can do good clinical work, but also that once a month we can come together as a team and have that unity of being in a room together, again, updating on everybody hears things at the same time. We can have discussions, we can process through what's happening. And then we always have a training.
And it's always, for going back to the rounds, it helps also keep the fidelity, because see when Kelly Kincaid is
Yes.
showing, all the
scores.
data, the scores. So making sure that everybody that's working with that particular child, they are meeting the goals. So making sure that it fits, what was already planned. And if there are some things that need to be reevaluated, so people can talk about it right in there and take notes. So I really valued, sitting in those meetings. So, yeah.
And that's exactly their intent, and I think they do meet that need. But then the same thing with trainings, making sure that, so every month we're carving a space for trainings. Obviously with the conscious discipline, we're carving another space for trainings. The other thing that we do well is every department has a department meeting. So every Tuesday afternoon, day treatment staff is together. Wednesday at 11:30, clinical staff is together. Ops has them. So that allows the specific work that each group. So that gives the manager of that department, the opportunity to drill down on things and tasks that we need to accomplish as a goal. And then from that is then also personal performance reviews. So every April we do performance reviews of every staff person.
It's on an individual basis?
So every director, manager of, whoever's managing a group of people, we have an extensive form, and I can show it to you. And it's really a rating of kind of what we, again, back to the beginning, your value system, timeliness of work and your teamwork abilities, and it's really a value-based kind of criteria. And then the last two pages are different. Well, the last couple of pages are different depending on your job. So for educators, there's 4 or 5 questions that really drills down onto their competency in educating. For the therapists, there's one that really drills down on their, ability to understand trauma and teach about trauma. So for those 2 departments, they have 1 more page of their performance review that's very much about the competencies to do those jobs. And it also includes questions about self-care, learning to take care of yourself, and the manager rates them on. So we've tried to use that then as our annual benchmark that we can continue to measure competency. Then it also, those are the direct ways we do it. The indirect ways are like what you just said, satisfaction surveys. You hear good and bad sometimes. In the past, a positive example is we'll get raving, wonderful comments about how gracious Carrie is at the front desk. When we ask the waiting room, she's so welcoming. She makes me feel like I'm valued. I'm like, that's a competency. We've also, one year we had a comment about the music's too loud in the waiting room. It's hard I'm already a little worried about things, and it upsets me. So that, right, wrong becomes a feedback to the person of, let's continue to think about the environment we're creating. This is one person's opinion, but, keep expanding the thought process. So that's another way that we look at that. And then obviously there's encounters. There's things that happen, and when people are upset by a situation, we do, and people don't always trust, but if it's brought to our attention, we tend to bring both people in, hear both sides of the story, and then somewhere in the middle is the truth of what happened, and try to just raise the awareness, try to provide coaching, corrective action if that's necessary, understand how the decisions were made, and then determine what's the best next step for that.
But I was going to say that I really appreciated when we had the last staff meeting, and you started the conversation with let's talk about the elephant in the room. And it was so comforting to have that safe place. And people could open up, very kindly, very respectfully, because we come from different backgrounds. We have men, women, older people, younger people, people who agree with X or Y political party. But it was really a very positive conversation. And honestly, I'm not sure that I find it so easily elsewhere, that you can feel safe to express, your true feelings, even if you're doing it in a respectful manner. That's what I mean. And honestly, I think, I hope they understand how valuable it is, because it's not easy. Last year I was, a freshman in the MSW program, and there were some conversations about white privilege and stuff like that. But it was really weird to me that, the other black students in the classroom, they mostly said nothing. I was like, I don't know, it's because I'm from Haiti, you know.
Right.
I don't know.
Really?
I was mostly the person, you know, like here I know I opened up the conversation and it helped. But last year it was really weird. They all were like scribbling on their notebooks. And then afterwards I said, why you didn't say anything? I said, well, nothing is going to change. I said, really?
Yeah.
But if you don't keep, you know, expressing, you know, maybe one day somebody will hear you.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not yesterday, maybe not today, but one day.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. That was really a discovery for me.
That is very interesting, but the answer doesn't surprise me at all, because I think that's what I hear is kind of that it doesn't make a difference. That's very sad.
It is sad. It is sad.
Because, you know, I was raised as a social worker. I went through, I went through the KU program, but I vividly remember we had one class that was always, the class was you share your story. You create a presentation about your life. And the power of just hearing, again, we were all, graduate students, but the diversity amongst everybody's story and why they are on that path. But again, at the end of the day, it's the power of an individual story and how it can influence your own life and expand your own way of thinking.
Exactly.
So for me, your story will impact somebody. It either creates a connection or it creates a teachable moment. And so we have to always make time and space to hear each other.
That's exactly right.
But that comes from my social work training.
Yes,
that really. Yeah. But I do think it's trying to create a culture of, if we can't do that with ourselves, we cannot be safe for our families that come in when the deepest, darkest, most horrible thing has happened. And one of my big wishes is, we want families to feel safe here, and it's a healing place. And parents have so much shame. When they have been the reason that, the child has to be here, that I don't want that parent to feel any more judged for the worst mistake they made in their life. They know it was a mistake. If they're coming for treatment, they've made some understanding that I need help. And so we need to embrace that and not judge, but to hear their story and understand how they got to that space and what can we do so you don't ever get to that space again. What do you need to change? So it's kind of like, if we can't do it as an agency, then we can't do it well with our clients.
But you opened the door to something that was really in my mind as well, the parents, because we are catering to the needs of the children, but the parents, of course, are in the background, and we hope that they are part of the process. So how does the agency measure the impact that they make on the parents, or is it something...
Well, that's a great question. Again, when I could look at the big picture, where I think we can improve is our parent program. We just wrote a big federal grant with the hope that we could expand that parenting support. We didn't receive it, but I think that's, again, like, if I had some money and could really do it well, we would enhance our parenting program, and we may get there. I'm hopeful, and someday. Because I think you're absolutely right. The child is the fit within the home, and we can change. We can work on the child and do a great job with that. It's helping the family and then the fit between the two, and that's why PCIT is such a great step into that.
Exactly.
One of the things we did, we have an extensive program evaluation process. The measures that they fill out. We look at trauma, we look at mental health, and we look at development. In that process, when we first started, we also looked at parenting stress. We used an inventory called the Parenting Stress Index.
Oh, yeah. I see.
Yes.
I saw this.
Yes, there it is. So let me tell you about it.
Yes, please. But I wasn't sure what it was about.
Love the tool, because once the full one, not the short form, the full form ends up giving you 2 scores basically. And it's able to kind of determine, is the stress in your life because of the child, or is the stress in your life because of just regular grown-up issues, relationships, finances. And from that clinically helps us know if you see the majority of your stress coming from your child, then we know as clinicians we need to help provide PCIT and ways for you to, work with your child. If your stress is really coming from life, that's case management.
Exactly.
And so it's a real nice kind of tool to help us determine that. There's another part of that is a validity scale.
Okay.
And
is it part of the same? Okay.
And so there's a number